Over the past couple of years, you and I have driven a lot of electric cars, and not surprisingly, only a small subset of those could be considered entertaining to drive, and also falling under the heading of not a surprise, only one was downright fun to drive, which coincidentally came to us by way of BMW's M division, the first ever they came out with an EV propulsion system, which presents us with a question. If we were to take away some power from that very same car, would it still be fun to drive? Okay, so first things first, what is this? Answer, the BMW i4 E40. Translated, it is the less powerful version of the BMW i4 that you and I have already driven. That one was the M50, which is all-wheel drive. In other words, it has a front electric motor and a rear electric motor. This makes do only with a rear electric motor, which turns into 335 horsepower and 317 pound-feet of torque. The M50, that was about 500 horsepower. The battery is the same, 81.5 kilowatt hours, which is made up of 12 modules of 72 cells each. In terms of charging, on a DC fast charger, it can go from 10 to 80% in about 32 minutes, a full charge in a little over 8 hours. In terms of how it does it, well, that's made do with an 11 kilowatt onboard charger. Then there's another important change here between the two vehicles. That last car we drove has an adjustable suspension fitted as standard. This, it's optional. The car we are driving today does not have it fitted. Then there's the range, at least according to the US government. Now, this car is fitted with 19-inch wheels, which are optional, but this can be had at least fitted as standard with 18-inch wheels. That one is 301 miles of range. This one, 282 miles of range. As a basis of comparison, that M50 was like 220, 230 miles of range. Then there are the performance figures. There, it's a little bit different, but not a whole hell of a lot. That previous car was downright quick, like an M car should be, 3.7 seconds to 60. This is 5.5 seconds to 60. In terms of VMAX, 118 miles an hour. Okay, so round two in the BMW i4. This time it's a bit lighter, 4,680 pounds, or depending on express your weights and measures, 2,122 kilograms. That's about 350 pounds lighter than the M50 version of the same car. With that, sport mode. Oh, that's a little bit of a delay, but this is still a quick car. Oh yeah, this is good. This is really good. It feels like a BMW the way it delivers power, but you can definitely tell that it's not an all-wheel drive car. As a matter of fact, you can have a little bit more fun with the acceleration in this than in the faster M50. This does have a single-speed transmission, so it does not have the same trick as the Porsche Taycan. I don't think it would really need it in this car because it has a different mission, at least the acceleration profile and the kind of power it delivers. This is more of a traditional BMW to drive around town in terms of the way it delivers power. Think of it as like a BMW 323 compared to the old school BMW 325. It's that kind of a difference for those that remember. Wow, this is a fun little car. Then we got to get to the point of all of the bits underneath the vehicle, and there it's the same. So it's got that double joint strut in the front, multi-link in the rear. However, you notice immediately it is not an all-wheel drive vehicle, and I got to say, that's not a bad thing at all. For situations like this, California, Florida, Texas, where one wouldn't need it, I would argue it's a little bit more, perhaps, tail-happy car, if you could do that with a EV. Remember we said in the M50, it's the first EV I've ever driven where I could steer it with my right foot. There's more steering on offer with your right foot. Now, something huge I have to point out. The overall composure, it's definitely different between this and the M50. The M50, it feels better on this road. Like, notice I'm bobbing around here a lot. I feel like the car is like pitching and squatting and diving and all that kind of stuff. That's because, yeah, it doesn't have 350 pounds in the front of the car. Sure, I feel a little bit of lift in the nose, but overall, again, I think the theme here, this is the more fun one to drive over the M50, at least in terms of driving dynamics. That one is more buttoned down. Now, an interesting side note I need to share with you after driving a lot of fast EVs at this point. You know, when we first drove the Porsche Taycan, the thing you notice immediately, that is not just a quick vehicle, but it kind of pushes beyond the limits of the steering, where there's a lot of plow when you get into some really tight moments. This, you don't feel it. You don't feel that the propulsion system is overpowering the steering. There's a good balance. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the options game with today's contestant, something that looks suspiciously like a BMW 4 Series GranCoupe fitted with an electric propulsion system, otherwise known as the BMW i4 E40, for a base price of $55,400. Now, something rather important to point out, the M50, the all-wheel drive, that has a base price of $65,900. Then there's the color. They call this skyscraper gray metallic. Not my favorite. I've never seen one of these with like a dark metallic color. Would love to see that. Either way, this color is an additional $550. Then there's the Oyster Vernasca leather. Lovely interior color, just not a good contrast between these two. However, the Vernasca leather, we've seen it in other BMWs. It's got a lovely tactile feel. I'd say well worth the $1,450. And the driver's assistance package, this is the level 2 autonomy. No, this is not a self-driving car, $1,700. Then the premium package, that brings along things like the heated seats, the heated steering wheel, the lumbar support, $950. Then the park assist package. This brings about the bits that make parking a little bit easier, but also a drive recorder and a 360-degree around view camera, $700. And satin aluminum trim, very nice touch on this design of BMW, so I'd say well worth $600. Then iconic sounds. Basically, when you put this car in sport mode, like we were driving today, it makes weird sounds like a Porsche Taycan, and it's a bargain at $100. What is not a bargain is a Qi wireless charger. Why is this optional? On a $55,000 car, $300, and a 5G SIM. So basically, this is an additional telephone that has 4 wheels. For $55,000, the SIM is $300. Then the curved display with the head-up display. There's some confusion with this because some of the documentation of this vehicle from BMW says that the curved display is optional on the i4s, and here it is indeed listed as an option. So there's some confusion as to whether it's the curved display or just the head-up display, $1,000. And then this being BMW, a Harman Kardon sound system, which is kind of like the Goldilocks in the OEM premium sound world. You see, there's a spectrum. Like there's the ones that are $5,000 that sound really good, but they're $5,000, and there's ones like this. This one's $875. They usually don't sound very good. This one, it actually works. I'd say it's worth the $875. And then while we're talking about value, this and the M50 are both fitted with a sunroof as standard. So the only other thing we would have to add is the destination and handling from headquarters, München, Deutschland, for $995, which brings us to a total retail price of $64,820. Now that M50, that was about $12,000 more as equipped compared to this. Okay, so let's you and I discuss a couple of notes. First would be the steering wheel. Yes, we already discussed the steering, but this is specifically focused on the steering wheel. Notice it's not the same thickness of steering wheel that's on the M50 that you get on M cars. I have to say one of the best in the business is the thickness of the rim of a BMW M steering wheel. This is kind of like a standard BMW steering wheel, and it's kind of out of place here because this car, its abilities are kind of here. They're unexpected. I would expect a different wheel to kind of back that up. My guess is one could probably spec that. At least I hope someone could spec that because it's noticeable here. The steering is that good. The only thing that lets it down is your actual touch point, your connection with the steering. Then something very pedantic. If I were to go into this whole control system, this UX. Overall, it works well. We've discussed this in the previous iX and i4 episodes, so you can go back and check those out. Then there's the fit and finish of this. It's a little bit better than some of the ICE BMWs we've seen, specifically like 2 Series GranCoupe. That was not good on the inside, especially below the belt line. Here, it's good from top to bottom. And when one considers the price we talked about in the options game, this really does need to stand out to the point where it feels first like a BMW on the inside, then an EV. An absolute welcome change in today's day and age. And so we return to the question from the top of the episode. If we were to take away some power, is this still as fun to drive? The answer is a definitive no. Rather, it is more fun to drive. If I were to need to daily an EV in places like California, Florida, Texas, where I wouldn't need all-wheel drive, this would be the definitive choice. One asterisk there, I would need to fit it with the adjustable dampers that were on the M50, which brings us to the wish list. And here, I'm not gonna get as deep as I did in the M50 episode where I was begging for lighter batteries, because really what this car is, it's a glimpse as to how good EVs can be if batteries were lighter, because while this isn't exactly lighter, it masks the weight of the batteries. Instead, the regen. Here, you can adjust the regen, but you have to dig into the menus in that console, that curved dash. You can barely do it when you're driving. It's very annoying. How about something we have in other BMWs? Paddle shifters to adjust the regen. That would make it a more engaging experience. And this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And with that, you may have noticed a big green blob throughout this entire episode sitting right next to this car. You see, we wanted to pull that from way in the back of the hangar to remind you of the good old days of internal combustion engine. And this kind of was almost the height because it has a W.O. Bentley designed V12 in a Lagonda. Not an Aston Martin Lagonda, a Lagonda. Until I see you in the next episode, bish beta.